And now, from the CFTK TV studios, this is Northwest Connections with your host, Robert Pictou.
Welcome to Northwest Connections. I'm your host, Robert Pictou. Our show today comes to you from the traditional and unceded territory of the Tsimshian people. As a graduate of UBC's law school, Mr. Lomax began his career as a lawyer facilitating land claims negotiations for British Columbia's Treaty Commission. After attaining his MBA at Columbia University, he later worked for the Canadian Federal Department of Justice before entering the investment sector in the United States. On today's Northwest Connection, President and CEO of First Nations Bank of Canada, Bill Lomax.
I'm really excited about the opportunities that we have here in the Pacific Northwest. My message for you today is really quite straightforward. The landscape in this country is changing. Let me rephrase that. The landscape in this country has changed, and it's not going back to where it was. We're in a whole different world.
So if we think about the way things were, say, 30 years ago, compared to where we are now, we are absolutely in a different world. And I don't mean in the ways that you might imagine. We think about AI, we think about green energy, things like that. Those are important. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about First Nations presence, First Nations involvement in the economy, the unstoppable changes that have taken place already, the advancements, our growing ambitions as First Nations, our growing capacity. That's really quite something now. When I go out and I see the people across the table from me compared to, say, 20 years ago, the sophistication level is palpable. It's just really different. But I'm going to get into that in a minute. So let me just tell you, take a moment, tell you a little bit about my background. I was born here in Terrace, Mills Memorial Hospital. I'm Gitsan, member of the House of Luce. My hereditary name is Musqueluis. And it was a very different time growing up here in the 70s and 80s in Terrace. You know, the racism towards First Nations was really quite overt. I'm not saying it's all gone away, but I mean, it was really on the forefront back in those days. The best job opportunities back then were really union jobs. You think about the sawmill, Safeway, jobs like that. Those were some of the best jobs going. And as a kid, I didn't even know what Wall Street was. I had no concept. It was completely foreign to me. I'd never heard of it. And the only thing I knew about banking was that I'd gone there with my parents to deposit a check or get some money out from the teller. So I really didn't know much about this area. But I knew I wasn't destined to work at the mill or at Safeway. As a teenager, I moved to Vancouver with my mom, and that was interesting. Life in this big city was quite different, of course. I did miss the community up here a lot, but you know, sometimes life takes you to places. I ended up doing, I think it was mentioned, my undergrad, my law degree at UBC, and money was never really the primary motivator for me. I always wanted to work with the community to do something better for the community, and I started in the treaty process. Working with the BC Treaty Commission. And that was fascinating. I thought treaty rights were really interesting. But, when I was there, I thought I could have a meaningful impact. And my concern, though, was I was working with all these nations that were theoretically coming into large settlements. We've only seen a few of those happen, and they've been great, the ones that have happened, but we've only seen a few of those happen compared to the number of nations in this province that have been involved in the treaty process. It was a great experience, but I began to think I could have a bigger impact if I took a bit of a different direction. Because I thought while these settlements are important, is really what happens after you get these big settlements that counts, right? If you get these massive cash settlements coming into First Nations, and you send all that money out on a per capita distribution, it might as well never have happened. In fact, it's probably worse for a lot of folks. You're going to have death rates go up significantly. a lot of bad things can happen. Or you can do something really great with it, like we've seen our friends at Niska do, right? Build out a fund that will last forever and provide for the nation forever. So that kind of thing got me really excited. I wanted to learn about finance as a tool for nation building. It's a opportunity for prosperity that we don't see coming along every day. So when you get that kind of opportunity, you got to take advantage of it. So I thought I could have a bigger impact if I went in and learned about investments and learned about the markets. So I went down to the US, I did my MBA at Columbia University. That got me to Wall Street. And I ended up spending about 20 years off and on Wall Street. A really fantastic experience. And I thought I would finish my career there because it's a pretty great life, being a Goldman Sachs banker in New York and San Francisco, right? I figured I'd finish up there because every time I looked for an opportunity up here, I didn't see anything that interested me.
Northwest Connections will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK TV studios, this is Northwest Connections with your host, Robert Pictou.
Thank you for staying with us. With a base salary of $110,000 US, depending on performance, an investment banking analyst can double annual salaries. After 22 years working on Wall Street and in private equity in New York, let us return to the conversation as Bill shares why he gave that all up to come back to the Northwest.
It was an opportunity to come up and play a significant role with First Nations on their economic development and their financial success. I felt the call of purpose of coming home, really, is what it came down to. And that trumps things like salary, right? Honestly, to be frank, I'd make a lot more money if I stayed down in the States. That's okay. I really love what I'm doing up here. When I reflected on what was important in life, it was a really easy decision to come back here. So here I am. First Nations community across the country are in the midst of what I like to think of as an opportunity revolution. It's a time when financial and business opportunities are greater than they've ever been for First Nations. It's the first time since contact that First Nations people have been able to think of a very different future. Being able to provide for families, own a house, have a good job, to build healthy, stable communities and vibrant communities. There's a huge and growing sense of optimism as I travel across the country. I see it everywhere. And increased capacity within these communities that are reshaping Indigenous businesses across this country. If we take a look at First Nations Bank, where I work, it's the only Schedule I Indigenous bank in the country. And in a lot of ways, it mirrors the success First Nations have had across this country. It started about 28 years ago. Back then, times were tough for most First Nations. There was a couple that were successful, but times were tough for most, right? But now it's a financial powerhouse. We have 21 branches and service centers across the country. We see big banks closing branches, but we're opening them. We're reversing that trend. And why are we doing that? It's because the communities that we serve are really seeking financial information, access to finance for their people. They want affordable capital. They want wealth creation and wealth management opportunities in their communities. They want financial literacy, and that's what we do. Money's an effective tool for nation building. It's really an important one. In fact, when the gentleman talked about energy being the oxygen of a lot of the things that we do, cash is the oxygen for nation building. You can't really do a lot of nation building without being able to pay for drug and alcohol rehabilitation, things like educational programs, cultural revitalization. You can't do that. You can't build housing without capital. So it's important. And when we think about it, a lot of First Nations folks didn't always feel welcome in the banking system, right? You go out and people might feel like they walk in and they're getting judged as soon as they get in there. And we know that happened, right? That's happened. We're here to try and change all of that, so that when a First Nations grandfather walks into a bank with his granddaughter and says, I want to open a bank account, they don't both end up sitting in handcuffs on the curb outside the bank. Financial literacy is really a critical part of the kind of things that we need to do. People need to feel comfortable in this space, and we know people haven't in the past. So First Nations Bank, we're 87% Indigenous owned, 70% of our staff is Indigenous, and over half of our board and senior management are Indigenous. Earlier this year, we made a deal with Canada Infrastructure Bank, a $100 million deal that will allow us to bring capital to First Nations at lower than market rates, significantly lower than market rates. And that's great for us, but it's really great for the communities.
Northwest Connections will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK TV studios, this is Northwest Connections with your host, Robert Pictou.
Welcome back to Northwest Connections. FNBC was founded in 1996 and offers financial services to both Indigenous and non-Indigenous customers. With approximately 15,000 customer accounts, the bank's focus is providing financial services to Indigenous businesses, governments, and organizations, Indigenous individuals, and non-Indigenous businesses serving Indigenous markets.
So this is a land development program. It will allow you to build out community buildings, businesses, and infrastructure within your community at much lower prices than you would otherwise. And happy to talk to you about that sometime if you're interested. What we're seeing is that Indigenous people really want to take control of the development of their lands. We're opening branches in First Nations, as I mentioned. We're providing full financial services to communities across the country. And we recently opened a branch at Ermineskin in Alberta. And that was fantastic. But so what's different about the way we do it, right? What does it matter? Well, when you walk in and you can smell buffalo grass burning, and there's a drum circle at the opening ceremony, and there's fry bread, by the way, for all of us that like fry bread. Over here, we probably get a little bit of Uluking grease there. It's a little bit more of the buffalo, Good things happen, very community focused, right? But that's a welcoming of the community, the Native community, to come in and feel like this is a place of their own, right? And that's important. First Nations people need to feel like they own the financial space. So we're very happy to have that happening. I think a lot of folks, though, look at this and say, well, this is great. You've got this opportunity revolution. Things are going great. But there's something going on, right? I mean, we all know that there is a change in government that's quite likely to happen in the next while. Isn't that going to shut everything down? Isn't that going to bring an end to all of this for us? Well, look, the Conservatives probably come into power, and that's going to happen. That's happened before. We've survived. We all know that deficits and budgets are always political issues. Official reporting from the government in Canada last year stated that $76 billion is going to need to be set aside to settle near-term financial claims with Indigenous communities. A lot of bureaucrats are rather upset about this. They say that the budget would be balanced if it weren't for all these Indians that were getting all these settlements. But these are reparations. These are things that are meant to make whole for things that have gone wrong in the past. And there's certainly been some massive settlements lately. You've probably heard about the Robinson-Huron settlement in Ontario for $10 billion. Many billions of dollars are going to go to the Cows and Plows settlement that covers a lot of different areas. I just heard that we have a water class action suit that's coming. There's going to be settlements going on all over the place. But here's the truth. Not just for Indigenous folks, but for Canadian businesses, there's no going back. Governments change, they come, they go, right? We don't. We're always going to be here. So it doesn't matter if it's Conservatives in power, it doesn't matter if it's Liberals in power, it doesn't matter if it's NDP. we're going to be here. We're going to keep pushing forward, right? The Indian Act, signed in 1876, was the most repressive document ever produced in this country. It crippled ambition, it killed dreams of a better life, but now First Nations are refusing to be held back by this thing. We're transcending the Indian Act. The phoenix, the thunderbird is rising, right? So we have a clear sense of identity, of purpose, and of clout. Let me give you a couple of key statistics about First Nations advancements. 30 years ago, a time when I like to think about because I was young, 30 years ago, poverty in First Nations was endemic. We had it everywhere, right? The wage gap for First Nations was really significant. You had the average First Nations person earned about 66% of the average wage of a non-Indigenous person. Now the picture is quite a bit brighter, right? The mean hourly wage gap is between 5 and about 11%, depending on where you are in the country. Now there's still work to do, but that is a really big improvement over that time period. And I'm sure within all of our lifetimes, we're going to see parity, if not better, and hopefully sooner than later. Education is a key component to all of this. These are old statistics, 2016, but 63% of First Nations youth aged 19 to 30 had completed high school. That number rose to 73% for the youth if they were off reserve. So clearly we had some issues on reserve, but First Nations are taking control of that in a way they haven't before, right? It's 8 years later, and First Nations, just in that time frame, I see a lot more that are building better schools, offering language and cultural education to promote and reinforce the cultural tie to the community. And they're giving youth a lot more hope than we had back 30 years ago when I was growing up. And some more good news, despite all the challenges, Indigenous people have made a lot of strides in education. While we have lower university graduations, 23% of Indigenous people now have a college credential or have completed a trade. Those numbers are higher than the general population. And we need to work on getting the university graduations up, but I see that happening in a significant way everywhere I go.
Northwest Connections will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK TV studios, this is Northwest Connections with your host, Robert Pictou.
The idiom, a seat at the table, means having status or position within a group or organization that gives you the authority and the opportunity to be heard, to participate in decision-making, and also to have your voice and opinions taken seriously. In this final segment of Northwest Connection, Bill shares where the First Nation seat is at the table.
So change has happened in Canada, and we're not going back. That's just not going to happen. If business interests want to do business, if they want to build a mine, they want to do anything that involves the land, the water, the ocean, they want to do anything, First Nations are at the head of that table, right? We are there, and they need to come to us. They can't just sort of run roughshod over us the way they used to. Chief Misael Joe was appointed as strategic advisor to the World Energy Nujihonic project recently. This is out on the East Coast. That means where the sand blows, one of the windiest places in the world. And it's on the west coast of Newfoundland, and they are building a 4 gigawatt renewable energy program that will power green hydrogen. A really amazing business opportunity. So this is a leader that took a nation that had been in dire poverty, no running water, all sorts of problems, and has turned that nation around. Has become very, very successful. It's a Thunderbird economy, as we talked about. He's going to be advocating for the First Nations, helping them realize the advantages that are available to them in this new world that we live in. If we take a look at another group, my former chair of the board was with the James Bay Cree, and they have some really great stories. I don't know if you know this story about the James Bay Cree, but they had the world's largest hydro project back in the 1970s was started in their territory. The Quebec Premier Bourassa's dream, they were going to build this massive project in the Cree territory without any thought to any of the Cree that lived there. And they sent in the bulldozers because there was no roads there. They sent in bulldozers to start raising the land, basically. They said that the James Bay Cree had no rights. But the James Bay Cree were not about to be bulldozed. They weren't going to let that happen. A number of them organized. They weren't before that particularly organized, but they organized and they established the Grand Council of the Crees. They won an injunction fairly quickly, and the project, which already had started, was stopped, but unfortunately only temporarily. The Quebec government appealed and won, arguing that the needs of millions of Quebec people outweighed those of a few thousand Cree in the north. This was kind of the attitude at the time, the majority, the minority, the majority is going to win, right? It doesn't matter that you've had this land from time immemorial. That was the attitude. But the Crees continued in courts and continued to negotiate. In 1975, they finally reached an agreement. The Grand Council took a completely different approach to the way they looked at the settlement with the government at the time. They included chapters regarding local government, health, education, justice, income security programs, and administrative control over the environment. That was created by the Cree and pushed into this agreement. They were demanding a form of sovereignty. It was revolutionary at the time. But the conflict with the Quebec government wasn't over. Quebec decided, Bourassa in the 1990s came back with his Great Whale Project. He proposed a 3,000 megawatt complex north of La Grande River, and the Grand Council immediately shut it down. They've become much more sophisticated. They'd already been to this rodeo once. And so they went to apply significant political pressure to New York State, where all this electricity was supposed to flow to. They brought in court cases on both sides of the border. They shut that down quick. Quebec was reeling from this because this was meant to be a multi-billion-dollar project. They were going to make so much money off of this. They realized, they being Quebec, that they couldn't carry on the way they had carried on. So they finally made a peace agreement with the Grand Council of the Cree, the Pays de Brave, the Peace of the Braves. And that was really quite different. So the Cree asked for revenue sharing, not equity. What's everybody asking for these days? Equity. All we hear about is equity. Equity can be very important. But if you're a government, revenue sharing is actually what they do.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Northwest Connections. The greatest distance in the existence of man is not from here to there, but the connection from his mind and heart. If we can conquer that distance, we can soar like an eagle and realize our immensity within. I'm Robert Picktow.